Hello everyone, my name is Nicole Fegan, and I love music, and I hope you do too, because that is what we are going to be talking about today. I feel like usually the EP is a medium that is generally rated. I feel like it's not especially underrated or overrated, but it's kind of the album's little sibling that sometimes doesn't get the love it deserves. So today I just want to talk about my 15 favorite EPs of all time. These are loosely ranked. Even when I was making my ranking, I moved things around, so like, the ranking is not definitively set in stone, but these are pretty firmly my 15 favorite that I have ever heard. Up first we have the Nightlife EP by Yuragi. This is a Japanese shoegaze dream pop EP, definitely more on the shoegaze side of things. This is a very noisy, punchy, hazy shoegaze little release. I definitely think it's for fans of like Loveless, that kind of like really dense, noisy haziness. Pretty much every single EP I'm gonna be talking about is quite short. There are some releases that are like named EPs but are album length, but all these I think are pretty much, EP length, like shorter than 30 minutes. But this really is just like a short punch of energy, so if you like female fronted shoegaze or just like, I don't know, little bursts of shoegaze pop, I cannot recommend this enough, and I really love it. Next we have an Emo Classic, Everyone Asked About You by Everyone Asked About You. This is a Midwest emo slash twee pop EP that is not on Spotify. I feel like it's a classic amongst like the people I know, but maybe it's not actually as like widely known in the world at large. Speaking of bursts of energy, this EP is just 11 minutes long, and this really has that like Midwest emo feeling of like it's summer and you're just so heartbroken. There's this one song on the EP that the lyrics are just, there's an ache in my heart, I can feel it, there's an ache in my bones, I can feel it, just like over and over again. And there was one time in college I was having a rough day and I like filled up a note in my journal with just those lyrics, which I think tells you like what you can expect to get out of this EP. It also sounds very good. It has kind of like that Midwest emo song structure and instrumentation, but with like a kind of twee-toned vocals. The vocal performance and just the whole thing does feel very warm, it feels very summer, and it's just some of the best Midwest emo ever created. Next we have The Last Dance by Disco Inferno. I think this might be better well known as one of the EPs on the 5 EPs, and this is just my personal favorite, and I think it's also the one I heard first. So this, there's a lot of genres going on here. This is 4 tracks long, and on the one hand you have The Last Dance and The Long Dance, which are kind of like 2 versions of the same post-punk jangle pop song. There are slightly different things going on in them. I prefer The Last Dance, but those are 2 songs on the EP. And then the other 2 are like experimental rock, post-rock, kind of have like a plunderphonics thing going on with a lot of sampling that feel like surreal and just very experimental. I think this works so well because of that contrast. I even feel like the fact that it is composed of 2 songs that are basically the same song adds to that kind of surreal experience, even though the songs, like each of the songs individually themselves, just are good jangle pop post-punk songs. I think the fact that like you take this whole thing as an experience, it gives off this very surreal little atmosphere. They're a group I really want to explore more of. I actually really just want to re-listen to the 5 EPs since it's been a while since I've heard that, but for what I can remember, this EP is a really great starting point for them to kind of get the wide array of the musical styles they're going for. Next we have an EP that is very different in style, but really enough is a kind of similar thing going on, and that is Ballad of the Band. I'm really thinking about School of Rock now, aren't I? It's Ballad of the Band by Felt. And the reason why this is a similar thing going on is because the first 2 tracks on this are just like some of the best jangle pop of all time, and the last 2 tracks are like this beautiful ambient piano tracks. I don't know what it is about these like disjointed EPs that works for me, but actually I guess to go on a little tangent, like I think that's kind of what works about EPs, is that like I feel like they often see a smaller audience than an album or even just a single, so I feel like a lot of times artists can do things they wouldn't usually do, which is why like I feel like when I go into an album I really want something that has some kind of cohesion. But for this EP, Ballad of the Band, it doesn't bother me that like it's basically 2 completely disparate things. It comes together kind of, but also feels it still feels disjointed. Anyways, I think this EP works just because every single individual track works. You can't find the whole thing on Spotify. The first 2 tracks are on Spotify in some kind of felt compilation, and the other 2 I just found on YouTube, which also makes for a funny little listening experience, because like when I want to listen to it, I'll do the first 2 on Spotify and the other 2 on YouTube. It's just beautiful. Felt is a group that I recently listened to their whole discography, and this was just a nice little hidden gem in the midst of all of their already amazing albums. Next we have Chronic Town by R.E.M, which is a Jangle Pop post-punk EP, and I think at this point this might be my favorite R.E.M release. I heard this for the first time this year and it kind of just like blew me away. I think what I love so much about this EP is like it really feels like the album cover. It is very, not bright, but like it's very colorful and full of life, but also definitely nocturnal. It feels kind of dark. Gardening at Night is definitely up there, probably in like my top 3 R.E.M songs. Probably it's like, oh shit, what's that called? We're probably like Harbor Coat, Night Swimming, Gardening at Night, and I just think like this is their tone and their style done very, very well in this nice 5-song compact little package. I almost wonder if the reason that other R.E.M releases haven't connected as much with me as this one is because I like kind of just like a smaller dose of R.E.M. On some of their albums, I think like their lows are a bit lower for me than they should be, but like this doesn't really have any lows. So it's just a wonderful little Jangle Pop post-punk release, and if you're an R.E.M fan and haven't checked this out, I think you really should, because you'll probably like it. Entering the top 10, and at number 10, we have Can You Feel My Heart Beating by Radiator Hospital. I mostly knew Radiator Hospital from their album Torch Song, which is a very like indie rock twee pop album, so I was expecting something very similar, but this is like this very noisy power pop album. It still has indie rock elements, it's like this power pop indie rock, and it still even has like those twee vocals. I think what works about this is that like the vocals are very twee-toned, but I guess similar to everything, to Everyone Asked About You, like the actual songs are just like such these noisy little punches of emotion. I think that contrast of both like my expectations and also what you expect out of someone with those kind of vocals, contrasted with, again, like this very burst of heartbroken energy. It just works really well. This one is also very short, just on YouTube, or at least it's not. I think it's also on Bandcamp, but it's not on Spotify. And yeah, I think if you like power pop, if you like indie rock, if you like really noisy music and you like noisy twee pop, I would recommend checking this out. At number 9, we have an EP I have talked about before, and that is Summer Months by Joie. This is a Midwest emo EP that might, I don't actually know the timing of any of these, but in my head, this is the longest one I'm talking about. I think there are 6 or 7 tracks, and it feels like it could be an album if it was marketed differently. Anyways, I just think this is an emo release that is very underknown and underappreciated. It doesn't necessarily rewrite the book on emo, but it does everything incredibly well. It feels, not that it feels mature, because it's still definitely like music about like being sad in your hometown, but I feel like the way these songs are constructed, they feel very crisp, they feel precise, they do builds in very excellent ways. My favorite song in this EP is a song called Handshakes, which I feel like is just like an immaculate build to this explosion. And I love this guy's voice. I don't know his name, but he's just got like one of my favorite, he's one of my favorite vocalists in all of emo. I love the tone of it. And yeah, I just think this is like a really, really solid emo release that if you like emo or indie rock and you have never checked this out, I think you'd love it. At number 8, we have Love's Easy Tears by Cocteau Twins. This is a dream pop ethereal wave release that I feel like is definitely on like the wavier and less structured end of the Cocteau Twins' discography. It's not as dreamy as like some of the stuff on Victorialand, but it does feel very ethereal and open. I think like the reason that Heaven or Las Vegas is probably the most well-known of their albums is I feel like it's got some pop value. The songs feel very like distinct and have structure to them, but this just feels kind of, yeah, like spacey, and again, ethereal in such beautiful ways. This EP is just 3 tracks long. I think it's hit after hit after hit. And yeah, I think this might be also my favorite, or maybe second favorite Cocteau Twins release. It's just like everything they do done incredibly well. At number 7, we have, I think, probably my second favorite post-rock release of all time, and that is EP by Mogwai. I went into this With like medium expectations, I had heard, oh god, the one with the man on the cover. I had heard Come On Die Young, which is a good album, but like didn't blow my mind. But this completely blew my mind. It's just like a post-rock EP, 4 tracks long, or sometimes I feel like it's on like streaming services as EP plus 6, which I haven't heard. These 4 songs are all just very atmospheric. They are very dark and of this earth. I was kind of like re-listening to some of the tracks to write my notes for this video, and they feel kind of like being in like a barren field at night. They're not necessarily scary, but like they just feel very of the field, like of the earth, and I don't really know how to articulate why. I think a lot of post-rock, a lot of ambient kind of evokes space and the air because of what they're like going for sonically, but yeah, I just feel like this feels kind of like middle America fields in weird ways. I think I appreciate the way that this music builds and like comes down. It's not as like cheesy or explodey as some post-rock. Like I like some explosions of the sky, but that's very, you know, like crescendo core, if you will. And I feel like this is really able to avoid that while also being very dynamic. It's not one note at all. Burn Girl, Prom Queen, Stanley Kubrick, Rage Man, I just named 3 of the 4 songs. It's just like post-rock, again, done incredibly well, and I think because it's in this this small package, it creates that emotion for the listener like very concisely and compactly. And I feel like after talking about this, I'm gonna go listen to it in full like right after filming because I really want to hear it again. At number 6, we have Quadrant Dub by Basic Channel. I heard this for the first time this year, and this was something that was like an instant 5 out of 5 star for me. This is a dub techno deep house EP. Dub techno, I like wrote down a definition for this because I didn't know if I was going to be able to articulate it perfectly. Atmospheric deepness and enrichment of textures through sound effects such as echo, reverb, phasing, and other sonic manipulation. So this is just a house techno album that feels like incredibly sparse, that creates this like hypnotic environment that like takes you in and keeps you there. It is so well done. It has this very nocturnal atmosphere, and again, like this kind of like running beat. Like I almost feel kind of like I am the train going through the city at night, if that makes any sense to you. Basic Channel and Cyrus, they have a lot of EPs and a few compilations, and it's possible that this was just the first one I heard, and so it's the one that is my favorite, but I've heard a couple others at this point, and this one really has stuck out to me. It is simultaneously good music to work to, again, because it is so repetitive and hypnotic, but I also feel like if you took the time to like sit and like listen to it, it also has a lot going on. Even though it is so repetitive, I feel like the variations on things and the way it creates that hypnosis is just like so engaging. It's awesome. I'm excited to check out more of their stuff. Also excited to kind of get into techno and house. I feel like I've listened to a few things recently that have kind of like wanted to have, like I've wanted to dive into those genres. So if you have recommendations for like, I don't know, minimal house or any kind of techno or house music, please let me know because I'm very interested in that suddenly. We've made it to the top 5, ladies and gentlemen, and in the 5th spot we have Transmission Flux by Duster. This is a very lo-fi slowcore release. That is just my favorite Duster release. I am not sure. I think what I love so much about this EP is it mixes that lo-fi-ness of Stratosphere and I think some of like the more crispness of contemporary movement, and I feel like is the perfect balance of those two. I think a lot of Duster's music evokes being in space but in different ways, and this really feels like the sparseness, the slowness of how like you'd imagine things moving in space like without gravity. It's like very slow and very sad. Stars Will Fall is maybe my favorite Duster song of all time, maybe just after Cooking, and like I just feel like it just creates these like, yeah, very lo-fi, very slowcore, dusty songs. It's really good. Again, I think if you've heard Duster, you've probably definitely heard Stratosphere, and I just cannot recommend this EP enough to people who like Duster or who really like any kind of slowcore or fuzzy, sad music. Now, my top 4 are all variations on a theme. They're very, very different sonically, but I realize that they're all in some way or another dream pop. So starting off, we have Sugar and Spice by Hatchie, which is a dream pop, jangle pop, twee pop, little burst of deliciousness. I personally mostly associate this with jangle pop. I think a lot of dream pop is kind of low tempo, kind of dreamy, but these are like sugary sweet pop songs. It is like definitively poppy. It is some of the music in the world that makes me feel best. Hatchie is an Australian musician who is still making music. This is one of the most recent releases on here. I think this came out in 2018, and then she had an album in 2019, and I feel like she is still exploring her style. It's very, very fun to kind of watch her not figure it out, because like she already had it figured out with this debut EP, but like some of her more recent singles have been a little bit more shoegazy, and she is just an artist that I'm having so much fun watching and getting to hear all of her new releases, and this is where the love for her started for me with this EP, and it is still my favorite thing she has ever made. Just so springy, so fun, such well-made dream jangle pop that makes you glad to be alive and in love with life. At number 3, we have Slowdive, the EP by Slowdive. This was their first ever release, and it is my favorite release of theirs. This is a Shoegaze Dream Pop EP that is just 3 songs long, and I think it is perfect. There is not a single moment on this EP that is not literally sonic perfection. I think sort of similar to how I felt about Cocteau Twins, I think the reason that Souvlaki is so well known is because I think a lot of the songs have individual like song value, maybe not pop value, but like you remember Machine Gun, you remember Allison, you remember Dagger, but this I feel like is really meant to be listened to as this like cohesive product. It's the song Slowdive and then Avalon 1 and Avalon 2. And Slowdive, the song, definitely is something I like often do listen to on its own, but I feel like the way it bleeds into the other two that have kind of like this, I think at least Avalon 2 has no words and it has kind of like a post-rock quality. It just works really well. I mean, again, a similar theme with all these EPs is how concise they are. Not a second of this is wasted. And I think that's again what I love about EPs. I feel like it's very easy to go re-listen to them because they're, I think, obviously albums are also meant to be listened to as albums, but just like there's something about the EP that you sit down and listen to 15 minutes of music of this release, of this record, and it just like, I'm saying words bad. I think it's harder to find an album with no time wasted because you have more chances to fuck it up. I guess maybe is what I'm saying. It's harder to find a perfect album because, you know, you have like 6 to 15 songs to work with, but here you have 3. And again, like it just flows seamlessly. I love this blend of the shoegaze, the dream pop, and some of the more post-rock sensibilities. And I just think it is shoegaze done remarkably well. Then number 2, we have Pulling Our Weight by the Radio Department. The Radio Department is always the bridesmaid, never the bride, because this is my second favorite EP, and their album, Lesser Matters, is my second favorite album of all time. So they're like, just maybe like my favorite artistic group of all time, but just never in that number 1 spot. So this is also a dream pop shoegaze release, but definitely more on the dream pop side of things. Also has like some elements of indie pop and indie rock going in there. And this is 5 songs for being sad and driving around on a springtime night. I really wrote nothing helpful for myself about the quality of the music. What I wrote and what I really hoped this would just do the job, for being sad on a spring night, driving around, being in love and out of love, suspends you in an evening of sound and drifts you away. So if those are feelings that like evoke something in you, this is something to check out. This just has some of like the most atmospheric, but also again like has some kind of like structure, pop value, dream pop songs of all time. The City Limit and I Don't Need Love, I've Got My Band, they're very different songs. I should have talked about these differently, but the City Limit is this very like, this really keeps you in that nighttime, in love vibe. That song I think is a little more on the hazy side, but then a little bit on the noisier side. You have I Don't Need Love, I've Got My Band, which is my second favorite song from this EP, and that is just like this gorgeous dream pop proclamation of life. Again, I feel the need to compare this because I feel like when I think of dream pop, for whatever reason, like I think of Beach House first. That kind of like slow, hazy vibe going on, and that's not entirely what's going on here. There is a lot of noisiness, some harshness. I actually didn't like the Radio Department when I first heard them because they were like actually a little too noisy and harsh on my ears, but I've come to obviously love them. So I think if you like your dream pop with a little bit of punch, a little bit of haze, and just with some like gorgeous lyrics, this is an EP for you, and definitely just check out anything the radio department has ever done. And then my favorite EP of all time, I think this was considered a single for quite a while, but I think it is pretty firmly accepted as an EP, and that is Paradise Valley by Grouper. This EP consists of 2 songs that are kind of at the midpoint of dream pop and slowcore and ambient pop. The first song is Headache, which is my favorite song of all time, and the second song is I'm Clean Now, which is also just like one of the best songs of all time. This dream pop is not noisy or hazy at all. This is very open, healing, restorative, ambient, gorgeous. Feels like you are watching the waves slowly wash over you in the utmost peace, the most peace you have ever experienced in your life. Headache is a song that has found me on like my darkest nights, and it has also been companion for like my most beautiful moments I have ever experienced. I think it is a song about having almost so little hope about the world that it wraps around to this openness to experience life. It is, again, like, I think like the least hopeful and most hopeful song I've ever heard in my life. I almost don't have words to describe how gorgeous and life-affirming. Life-affirming not in the way that like it's so happy, beautiful, you know, like you listen to a Bruce Springsteen song and like you feel ready to take on the world. You listen to this and it kind of just like, it feels like a hug from a god or something. I think both songs taken together, again, are just like the epitome of slow, sad, gorgeous, ruminative dream pop, slowcore, ambient pop. I think this is the pinnacle of those genres, and really, no matter what kind of day you're having, I feel like you should check this out. It might help, it might hurt, but no matter what, you're going to be hearing some of the best music of all time. So those are my 15 all-time favorite EPs. Please let me know what you think of any of these, if you've heard them, if you check any of them out, and let me know what your favorite EPs are. I'll either let you know what I think or put them on my list to be listened to soon. That is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching, and you will see me in the next one. I really gotta find better ways to describe music other than like the abstract ways it makes me feel. There's gotta be a better way!